All right, so we're started recording. So I don't. Basically, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk through Fantastic Four first steps. And I have not done one of these before, and I don't know how many more I'm going to do. I don't know what's in the beginning of this video, the middle, or the end. So we're just going to kind of roll. Um, and this is not really going to be like a review. It's just going to be like stream of consciousness type thing where I'm going to run through what I thought and what I think it leads to. So obviously, we did not know a ton about this movie going in outside of early on in the marketing and stuff. The first steps title was thought to have been like the astronaut type of thing. And then obviously later on kind of came to the realization, and there was some promo material that came out that revealed that Sue Storm was going to be pregnant in this movie, and that the first steps was maybe revolving around Franklin Richards as well. Obviously, after seeing the movie, that's like the through line, the complete plot line of this movie, is talking about Franklin Richards and just, how powerful he is as a being, and really like the power cosmic, which, it gets name dropped in there a bunch of times. We also, which something we kind of thought from the beginning, but at least me personally, I thought it was going to kind of be a gimmick. Is that Galactus was the main, villain in this movie. Originally, like with some of the promo material early on in the early trailers, and even like the Comic-Con little like spurts that we would get, it showed Galactus, but I was not confident that he was going to be the big bad, just because he's such a, high level villain. And he's kind of hard to call him a villain. He's just like a being. Because I don't know, I guess you kind of classify him as that, but I just thought he was so high level that they would have to save that for a bigger movie. But it ends up, they definitely went with it. He is the number one big bad in this movie, and they did it really, really well, in my opinion. So a lot of things that kind of came together. The main parts that I really want to focus on, and I'm going to talk through, is like, one of the things that we knew about this movie going in was that somehow in the end of this movie they were going to get to Earth 616 because of the Thunderbolts post-credit scene. Well, obviously that does not happen in this movie. So I want to speculate a little bit on what I think the reason why they did that, and then how they're going to kind of shore it up in future movies. Second one is Franklin Richards overall, and how I think he affects the Secret Wars storyline. We'll talk through basically Doctor Doom. And his little quick appearance at the end. And then there's a comic reference that post-credit scene, I think, is directly pulled from. And if you know me, and you probably get to know me if I do more of these videos, I'm not a huge comic head. I didn't read any of the comics growing up. I got into these movies as I was 5th grade, and it was 2008, and the Iron Man movie came out. And my parents took me. They got me out of school early because they did this thing. They called it 5th grade day with me and each of my siblings, where just one day in the second half of the year in 5th grade, they would pull us out randomly. We wouldn't know. And we'd get to go do something fun just because we were moving up in the middle school. And so basically it's been since then. So I'm nerded out on Comics Explained. Shout out to Rob and those videos because they're awesome. And some YouTube videos to get my background information. But in the comics, there's basically a piece that I think that post-credit scene is pulled from. It's such a freaking cool scene in the comics, and I think it's something that I think could show that could be a lot of foreshadowing for the future of the movies and post-Secret Wars type of stuff. And maybe even in Secret Wars. I don't think it'll come up in Doomsday. But I guess let's start there. We'll just kind of go backwards. So starting there, so that scene, and I will insert a picture of the scene from the comics. There's a scene in the comics where it's when Franklin Richards is 4 or 5 years old. So as soon as I saw that, the title card right there, when it jumped to the post-credit scene where it said 4 years later, immediately my wife was sitting beside me, and I went, oh my goodness, because I did not think they were going to do it in this movie. I was hoping they would, and they ended up doing it. But basically in the comics, what happens is Franklin Richards like they allude to it in this movie that Galactus says that he's so powerful and kind of omniscient, even from a young age, that he suppresses his own power to basically like protect because he is so young using it. So he's like, it's a weird dynamic where he's like super wise to do that, but also doesn't trust the power because he's a kid. And I can't remember if he does it to himself in the comics or if it's done to him by somebody, like maybe Reed Richards or somebody. Anyways, in the movies, they're taking the approach that like he's kind of done it to himself, and Galactus alludes to that when they're on Galactus' ship in the first half of the movie. But basically, in the comics, there's a scene where like Franklin Richards is put to bed in his room, and his room is like in this hallway, and Reed and Sue are kind of in the living area, and they hear a noise, and they walk to the hallway, and they turn and look down the hallway, and Franklin Richards is out of his room, and a man is crouching down beside him, basically like talking to him. And Reed and Sue, obviously freak out because they think that somebody's coming to do something to their son. And a barrier kind of pops up, and it's kind of like an invisible barrier, and they can't get through it. And they're freaking out, yelling. And this guy kind of like crouches down. He has a conversation with young Franklin Richards, and then basically like wormhole opens, or he just kind of disappears. And so basically in that scene, what you learn later on in the comics is that was an older Franklin Richards coming back in time to basically like wake himself up and take off that restriction on his powers because he knew it was time that he could start using them. And then I think the last panel in that comic is Franklin Richards underneath the blanket in his bed, literally creating like a galaxy. So it's like just like an expression of how powerful he is. So I think they took that, obviously that panel in the comics, which like I said, I'll show it, throw it up there. And I think that's where they pulled to get the post-credit scene. If you've seen the movie, which I hope you have because this is completely spoiler-filled, basically Sue is reading a book to Franklin on the couch in the living room in the post-credit scene. She gets up to go get another book that he wants to read or something. And it's funny because they pull out Charles Darwin's book that's like a, super high level like book that's just expressing how smart Franklin is from a young age, that he likes reading that stuff at age 4. But she gets up, she walks to the kitchen trying to find the book, talks to Herbie, and then there's kind of like this ominous tone that sets in, and she walks around, kind of starts getting her powers ready to see if she's got to use them. And she walks around the corner of like the chimney, and Dr. Doom is standing there, or he's crouched down with his back to us, with his cloak on, holding his mask in his hand, talking to Franklin. And it looks like Franklin is kind of like looking up at him, like they're having a conversation or something important's being said, where Franklin doesn't look scared, but he also doesn't look like, he's not like joyous. So that's the scene that kind of happens. And I think immediately the thoughts go to, oh, that's the introduction of Doom. He's just kind of come. They're setting him up as a villain for Doomsday. We'll pick up somewhere around there. Because earlier in the movie, in the Future Foundation, one of the big meetings that they've got that like resembles the UN, Sue is talking, and they're talking about how all these nations have come together for basically world peace. And Latveria, there are 2 seats there, and they're both empty, which is where Dr. Doom is from, and it's where he's like basically the king of and like dictator. And he's kind of got the same relationship with that as like Black Panther to Wakanda and Namor to Atlantis, that he like looks out for his people, and that's all he cares about. If the whole world ends and his people are okay, then he's fine with it. But so I think that's the first thought that everybody's head will go to is like, okay, well, this is just introducing Doom. He's kind of gotten in there, and he realizes Franklin Richards is powerful. I think that makes sense. And I don't think that's a bad thought to have. But the second thing that I think people will miss, and I think might be the bigger picture, knowing how Kevin Feige does things, is I think that there's a possibility that we get revealed later on throughout all this stuff, and it might be the big reveal in Secret Wars, that Dr. Doom, in some way, shape, or form, is a future version of Franklin Richards. and particularly a future possibility of Franklin Richards that has gone bad, basically, and may not be as powerful. And I think they are taking that scene from the comics with all the innuendos that it has and the actual literal what it sets up in the comics and using it again, but inserting Doctor Doom and the bad side of Franklin Richards' possibilities into that scene to introduce them as well as set up that hopefully that's foreshadowing for a reveal we'll get down the line. The other hint that I think wraps into all this is that when Sue is looking for a book, and shout out to, I think it's New Rockstars that I saw this video, and I saw them point out, when she's looking for one of the books, she pulls, or excuse me, it's sitting like in the background, that it's one that it's like basically breaking down Schrodinger's cat. And basically, this is going to get into like theoretical physics, which I'm not well versed in. I'm just a nerd and love searching up stuff when I find it interesting. Schrodinger's cat is basically like multiverse theory. So it's about a cat in a box, and if, like, I'm butchering this, but if you were to have this switch that just randomly would decide if there was poison was put into the box or not, then you wouldn't know, and you would basically create two multiversal timelines until you open the box and figure out which one you're in. I just butchered that, I know it. If you're a physicist, I would doubt you're watching this video, but if you do, I'm sorry. But I think that is another hint into that possibility of like, hey, these are one of the possible versions of what Franklin Richards could turn into. And Dr. Doom is one of those. So that's kind of my post-credit scene thoughts on, I think that's a possibility down the line. And I think it's something that I would doubt a lot of people will pick up on. If they do, then I might just be, we might just all be thinking the same thing. But I don't know that they will. And I think it's a really interesting thought on how they could manipulate all this stuff to really make Dr. Doom different than in the comics, and also make RDJ's Dr. Doom and make a little bit more sense why he one is bad, how he is so powerful to start and do the Battle World thing like we think he's going to do in Secret Wars. I think it kind of could wrap it all together. So that was one of the squirrels that I wanted to go on and that I kind of hit. One of the other ones is one, like, I can't remember what I listed at the beginning. I should have written them down. But the overall, well, let's jump into like the Thunderbolts ending and how in the world this is all going to play together. So me, just about everybody else, I think, after you watch Thunderbolts, you see that the Fantastic Four ship's coming in the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts, and you're like, oh, that's how it's going to end. They're going to basically abandon their world, and they're going to end up in the 616 right before the incursions start. And I think that it's honestly, like, to toot Marvel's horn, I think it's some really good writing, because there were multiple times within this movie that possibility was given, specifically by like Shala Khan, the Silver Surfer, and then over again by both, I think, Ben Grimm and by Johnny Storm, where they say, hey, we should just take them and leave. And I think that's really good writing in a misdirect, that even at that point in the movie, because I had seen Thunderbolts, I was thinking about, oh, they're going to jump on a ship and get out of here, and Galactus is going to destroy the world, but it's not going to matter because they're going to be out to the 616, and that's how it's going to tie in. They didn't do that, and I'm going to just express some theories on why I think they didn't and how I think it'll tie in. And these are going to get big, high level, and I'm sorry about it, but I think it's interesting. So one possible theory is that we're just not there yet, and maybe there is another encounter with Galactus, because Reed shot him, to the end of the end of the universe. Said he's like 1 million years away, but I don't know that I would categorize that. Like, Reed could have said that, and the way that Galactus may be able to move across the universe, how smart he is, how capable he is, all that stuff could not really matter. And Galactus shows back up, does end up destroying the world, and then they get out. I think the more likely option is that if you know anything about incursions in the comics, what it basically is like dominoes. And I think if you're a Marvel nerd and you're watching this video, you probably know what this is already. But just to explain it, it's like dominoes, and that there are a bunch of universes stacked right side by side, and basically somebody pushes the first one or whichever one in the middle, and it starts a domino effect where they start hitting into each other. And in the comics, the connection point is Earth. And basically what happens is 2 Earths show up. If one Earth is destroyed, then the universes pass through each other and they both survive. If not, they both hit each other at Earth and both are destroyed. So it brings in like the dilemma of, do you destroy an entire planet's worth of people just so you can survive, or what do you do? But all that to say, there's a theory out there, and I wish I knew who it was because I'd give them credit, that the Doctor Doom that we're going to see in Doomsday is not the one from the Fantastic Four's universe, and it's not one from a universe we've seen. And basically what is happening is that Doctor Doom, being so smart, and if the last theory that I said is true, and he is a future bad version of Franklin Richards, then it makes even more sense. Doctor Doom is basically, he was on one of the Earths a long time ago, or recently, but I'd say more likely a long time ago, where an incursion happened. He destroyed the other Earth, and basically what he's been doing is riding incursions. So each time one of the, he's on, we'll use it as an example, he's on Earth 1. When Earth 1 crashes into Earth 2, he jumps from Earth 1 to Earth 2 and destroys Earth 1. And he's basically done that and is building basically like an army of all these Marvel characters, whether it's bad guys, he probably has some good guys. And he's building this army and getting more powerful to where eventually he'll be able to create Battleworld. I think that that's probably a fairly good likelihood. And I think what we could see is that at the beginning of Doomsday, when it comes, that one, either an incursion has already started in the, 828 universe, and Doctor Doom has just arrived and senses that Franklin Richards is there and goes to get him basically jumps to the new world, the 828 world from whatever one he was on before, and goes to find Franklin Richards because he knows that he might be the key to building Battleworld and to allowing Doom to become like the leader over all of the multiverse and the ruler. And I think we could be in that 4-year time jump, that we could be in the middle of an incursion there, and the Fantastic Four just doesn't know it yet. And then we see that there is some sort of a conflict, and Doom starts to take over 828, Universe 828, and that's when Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four get out, and they pop up in Thunderbolts at the end credit scene, and the Thunderbolts scene may just be a direct lift from Doomsday. I could also see where, and I think this is probably possible as well, and I'm sorry, I'm just throwing theories out here just because I think it's interesting, and there's a bunch of different options. We don't really know anything at this point. I think there is also a chance that, and stick with me here, that the Avengers Doomsday movie is more of a Fantastic Four movie, and it's almost like Fantastic Four 2. And it's centered around Doom, but I think we could see where a majority of the movie is literally picking up from right there, that point that we saw in the post-credit scene of Fantastic Four, and it's telling the story of how conflict begins between Doom and the Fantastic Four, and maybe like 3/4 of the way through the movie, or halfway through the movie, or it could be even more than 3/4, the Fantastic Four gets off of Earth 828 and gets to Earth 616, and what ends up happening is by the end of the movie, Doom has followed them, and the incursions have begun to basically just wreck everything. So yeah, there's a lot of theories there going a bunch of different ways. I'm sorry about that, but I think there's all a possibility that you just who knows. I do think that there's going to be some kind of connection between Doom and Franklin Richards. And I think the riding, the incursions thing makes a lot of sense on how Doom could get so powerful to the point where he could assemble Battleworld. The other side of that, and the last theory I'll give you here on this one, is that basically that just hasn't been happening. There have been incursions, but they've been in the far distance, and at the end of the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange and Clea jump in to go and try to find them, but they're far off and distant. We just haven't seen them yet. And Doom is from the 828 universe, the one that we saw there at the end, and he just realizes, because of all the news and everything in their world, with the Galactus wanting the kid, he realizes that Franklin Richards is super powerful, and he's going to go try to, take his power and use him, which I think is another viable option. I think the way that Marvel's going, they're getting more intricate, not less intricate. So with some of these storylines and stuff, I don't think they're going to be afraid with something as big as Secret Wars to make it a little bit intricate, and kind of do like, I'm going to use this as an example, but like an Inception type plot where you got to watch it multiple times to see it. I would be a little bit more, not upset isn't the right word, but disappointed if they went the easy route of like, Doctor Doom's been in this universe, he rules over Latveria, Fantastic Four's never met him, but Sue's heard that he's like a troublemaker, and then he just pops up in their building. I don't think that would kind of be like a lazy writing thing, which, like I said earlier in this video, Fantastic Four and the through line between them and that movie, the Matt Shakman movie, and their post-credit scene in Thunderbolts, I think is really, really well written, and I would be disappointed to see them go like the easy route after doing so well with that. So yeah, those are two big things, and I know I went for a while there. Only other things that I really want to touch on are, there is one of my theories going into this movie that I talked to some friends about, and that I thought was interesting is, and this is going to sound crazy when I say it because everybody's going to be like, wait, what? There is a line in the WandaVision TV show that Photon, is it Maria Rambeau? I can't remember. The only thing I remember is that she's called Lieutenant Trouble by Captain Marvel, whoever that character is, which is Photon or, I can't remember. Binary. No, Binary is her mom, but Photon. There's a line in that movie where she says she is running through some things that have happened in the universe, talking about these just kind of crazy things that have been popping up. And one of the things she says is that there was 4 astronauts that got lost in space in a cosmic storm in the 1960s, which is a direct reference, I don't think anybody can say it isn't, to the Fantastic Four. There's a part in the Fantastic Four movie that is interesting to me. And I don't know, I'm going to have to go back and watch it again to see if I'm right. But Johnny Storm, near the beginning of the movie, keeps talking about, and he does it 2 or 3 times really fast, to either Reed or to, maybe it's just the whole family sitting there, talking about, we need to go back and try again, basically. We need to go back up. I think the possibility is that that's an innuendo, and it's just a little, it could be just a throwaway line. I think what's more likely is that the Fantastic Four is originally from the 616 universe, and that they were just regular astronauts in the 60s. They went up, they got lost in a cosmic storm, came back to the 828 universe, whether that was through a wormhole or something. They switched into another universe. Then I think what ends up happening in that 828 universe is that the Fantastic Four, because Reed Richards is so smart, he's we got to get back home. So through kind of an elaborate thing, they become astronauts, and he, they're all super smart, and, they are already astronauts from the 616 universe, but they kind of get a reputation. They go up into space to try to get back to the 616. They run into another cosmic storm, and that's what mutates their genes and sends them back home. And then after that, I could see them just, basically, it's they accepted that they're going to be in this universe, and Johnny is the one that's I think we need to go up and try again to get back to our actual home. But they've kind of become the saviors of the 828 universe. So there's like that push and pull there of there a little bit. There's a tension of they're like, well, this world depends on us now. And last time we tried to do this, things went very wrong. And even though we got powers, it could have gotten even worse. I think there's some other hinting at that through some of Reed Richards' lines, where he's talking about I could have protected us from that, like it was his fault. Which again, it could just be that he's just talking about, them going up for the first time. But I think that line in WandaVision, either it happened and they had an original plan and they changed the plan, or that's going to be something that we figure out down the line, is that the Fantastic Four is originally from the 616. They went up as astronauts through a black hole or something, got switched over to the 828 universe, tried to go up to get back to the 616, got all their powers, came back, and then just settled in on the 828 universe. So that's a lot of stuff. And I think there are other like little throwaway lines in there that could be glossed over or could fit right into this theory, with like how Reed Richards is talking about multiverse theory in that little like promo video where he is talking to all the students and they're yawning. I think that would make a lot of sense why Reed Richards would know there's a multiverse, because they jumped universes on accident one time. So all of that, I think there's a lot bigger stuff that's been at play for a while. And if the writing is as good as I feel like it is, and we've seen hints of, and we've seen some really cool plot lines of like what I would call like old school Marvel, of the plot lines that like really build on each other. They're intricate and then they blossom into something that there have been a lot of seeds planted. It's what Marvel hasn't done good recently, but I think I trust them still, specifically Kevin Feige, that some of those seeds that have been planted, they just haven't blossomed yet. And they're getting a lot of criticism for stuff doesn't connect. It's stuff that we don't care about. I think it will all come back around. So that's a lot of random stuff. And I'm sorry because this is so disjointed. But this is just like a stream of consciousness video at this point. And I think that's probably how, if I do more of these, that's exactly how it'll be. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that I thought was interesting and worth talking about, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that I think we will probably see a different version of Galactus next time we see him, unless it pops back up that he gets back to Earth in the beginning of Doomsday, Earth 828. I think we'll see a different version that has not Shia LaBeouf as his herald in the Silver Surfer. We will see the male Silver Surfer in either it's Doomsday or Secret Wars, and I cannot remember his name in the comics, and I should. But I think that was another really good writing thing where they wanted to showcase Galactus. The Galactus in the original Fantastic Four movie was really odd because he didn't have his like comic accurate figure. He was just a cloud, which sucked. I really liked, by the way, how they did that Galactus had a ship this time, because it nerfs him a little bit for the movies, which is needed, where he's not just like this being that, like a Celestial in the Eternals, where he can just pop up and disappear, because then it would have been, there's no way that they defeat him. But if he's like a humanoid thing, that is basically has this ship, which is comic accurate, that he does have a ship that he moves around in. In some of the earlier comics when he shows up, the fact that he has a ship that basically feeds him the worlds that he devours is a really cool way to bring it down a little bit closer to Earth, where it's not as far-fetched that the Fantastic Four could defeat him. So really good writing. Again, lost my train of thought on that one. Basically, I think that it was really wise to do Shia LaBeouf's Silver Surfer in this movie, and then kind of have it run for one movie, because she was a one-off in the comics, where I think she only showed up in like 2 or 3 issues, and then the main male Silver Surfer was the one that was obviously throughout all the comics for a long time. And I think he will come up in Secret Wars or Doomsday. And I think we'll also see a new version of Galactus that's probably plays a bigger role throughout all that. because even with some of the innuendos, and I keep saying innuendos, they're really just like lines that are dropped, where Galactus was talking about how like Franklin Richards will take the burden from him. In the comics, there is a run where basically like it's exploring Franklin Richards, how powerful he is, and there's a run where Galactus becomes the herald of Franklin Richards. So Franklin Richards is so powerful that Galactus becomes his herald and does basically the Silver Surfer role for him. So I think there were some cool like comic, hints and winks in there, just talking about those kind of timelines. Another thing that I just thought of that is kind of cool throughout that is like, I'll have to go back and watch it again. But in the comics, I think that one, like Franklin Richards, like Galactus basically respects Franklin Richards because he's so powerful, which we saw in this movie just on a different level. I think if there's any kind of interaction between Franklin Richards that's older and Galactus, there will be like a mutual respect of like Galactus realizes that this is one of the most powerful beings in like the whole Marvel universe. But he was trying to take advantage of him because he was a baby to try to release himself of the burden. I think the other interesting thing that I just thought of in the back of my head, and I got to go back to watch it to confirm, but in the comics there's also the this cool thing where like basically the only human that Galactus will even acknowledge is there is Reed Richards in conversation. And I think when the Fantastic Four is standing in the ship, the only person that Galactus directly speaks to is Reed Richards. Like there are scenes where or in that there's dialogue where Sue Storm kind of yells at Galactus, but I don't think Galactus ever like has a conversation with anyone other than Reed Richards, which is just a cool little like, if that's true, Matt Shagman, shout out to him, because that's just like pulling from the comics and pulling a really cool thing, and like for us nerds out there. So I think that's kind of where we're going to end it. This was really just a video, like I said, stream of consciousness, which is probably how a lot of these will be if I continue to do them. But very, very good movie. I was pleasantly surprised. I've got a buddy that I'm not going to name him because I don't know that he wants to be name dropped, but he's a creator in the like superhero space, and he got to see the movie early. And I saw on his social media that he rated it 4 out of 5 stars. And just whenever that happens, like, I think, obviously you race the movies well, but I saw it and I was a little bit concerned because I always, whenever I see some of these early reviews come out with like creators that get to go see the movie early, whenever it's anything other than a 5-star, which this is not good on my part, but it's probably just me being a little bit too cynical. Whenever it's not a 5-star, it worries me that it's not going to be great, because I think of like, if somebody sees it early and they rate it a 4-star, then I think it would be tough to be able to see a movie early and a studio comes to you and is like, hey, do you want to watch this early? And then you say like basically it sucked to their face, because it would hurt, people going out to buy tickets. So obviously he wasn't doing that, but a 4-star even in that made me think it was going to be worse than it was, which it was not. I thought this was a very strong MCU movie. I think Thunderbolts, the success that Thunderbolts had critically and among the Marvel fans, will do great for this movie, because I think Thunderbolts suffered from the movies before it not getting great critical or Marvel fan acclaim. And so Thunderbolts didn't have as many people going to the theater to see it initially, and it kind of caught a little bit of a wave, but it wasn't enough in the end to really draw a big box office presence. I think this one, off the back of Thunderbolts, people will go to see it because of how a ton of people liked Thunderbolts, and it was widely known that it was a good movie. I think it'll draw crowds to this one. And I think a lot of people will go see it, and I think a lot of people will see it again. I think this will be a word travels fast type of movie. I'm not sure if it's $1 billion movie, which it may come out and it's like a $500 million movie, and that sounds stupid for me to say. I don't think it's $1 billion movie, just because I think a lot of people are going to, that aren't, Marvel nerds, or maybe not have even kept up with the movies, I think a lot of people are going to think it's an origin story, and they're going to be like, I don't need another Fantastic Four origin story. Because that's one of the most, I'd say Spider-Man and Fantastic Four are two of the most well-known Marvel origin stories. So it might suffer from a little bit of that. I'm going to do a box office guess here, which I don't know why I'm doing this, but it's just a guess. I think this is probably going to be like $825 million. I think it's going to do really good, and I think this is going to be one of those that we're going to look back on and say, this is when we realized that Marvel still is just as good as they were. That some of the through lines that are being connected through this movie, and I think will continue to be connected in future movies leading up to Doomsday and Secret Wars, I think we'll realize that there ends up being a foundation in these Marvel movies and really in any extended universes, specifically with comics, but with anything, where you have to lay building blocks and then you integrate them all together slowly and you plant seeds, and then you begin to see those seeds like start to flourish over time, and they all culminate in also a big event movie. And we saw that obviously with the first tier of Marvel movies with like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, all of those. And we didn't know it was coming, so we didn't have time to complain that things are moving slow or these are characters we don't care about. And then in the second round of kind of doing that after the original 6 obviously have kind of been phased out, and that the Infinity Saga is over and we're into the Multiverse Saga. I think obviously, it's just human nature to kind of complain a little bit when things don't seem just as perfect as the one that was passed. But I think it's going to prove that Marvel has kind of been planting those seeds, that Kevin Feige has always had the plan. And I think we're going to see that over these next, 2 years or so with these movies. So that's my pitch to why we should trust Kevin Feige with basically our MCU lives. Last little thing that I'll do here, just because that got me thinking about it, and this is probably something that's worth another video. This is going to be my predictions for, basically, we've talked a lot about Doomsday. Let's talk about Secret Wars. I think the Secret Wars event movie that's going to come, and I think 2027 is when it's set, maybe 2028. I think what ends up happening with that movie is we get a complete, basically, reset of the MCU and a reorganization into a single timeline where basically I think what they will be able to do, and I think it'll be a feat and they should be celebrated for it when they do it, because I believe they will. I think what they're going to do is basically end every Marvel superhero movie that has ever come out, and give it a clear ending, and then restart the entire Marvel movie landscape at a single point. And when I say end and restart, I'm talking the X-Men franchise from long ago. I'm talking the Fantastic Four movies. I'm talking the old Hulk movies. I'm talking the old Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. I'm talking the entire MCU. I'm talking all the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I think they are going to assemble all of that and basically our favorite characters from any of those franchises, assemble it all in one in Secret Wars. And I wouldn't be surprised if Secret Wars ends up being 2 parts. I would be so excited for that. But it's going to be such a big lift, like 10 times bigger than Endgame. I think they're going to assemble all that together, and then it's going to turn into Doom versus all, basically, and there's going to be a lot of characters that are on Doom's side and a lot that aren't. And I think it will all end in one. Secret Wars will take place on one world. All the incursions will have happened, and it will come down to this final world that all our favorite characters and all past characters have been on, including Miles Morales, which I think is going to be really important. Him in particular, and I'll explain that in just a second. It'll culminate in the defeat of Doom and basically a reset of that timeline through whatever power it is. I think what will probably end up happening is Franklin Richards that resets a single timeline, and that's where it begins, just one. And it'll be the main Marvel timeline, and it'll probably be like Earth 1, basically, or Earth Infinity or something. I think what they'll do is they'll take any and every character that they want, and it'll just be a complete reshuffle. So I think like Spider-Man, Tom Holland, because he's got a multi-movie contract, he will be there. I think they will recast Black Panther. I think they'll recast Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, maybe the Guardians. Any characters that have been killed off, they will just start a new timeline, and they can start it wherever the heck they want to. And it starts from there, and it'll be a mind wipe for every character that was involved, like Tom Holland Spider-Man. When he's involved on Battleworld, if they want to keep him past that date, he gets a mind wipe, and the only person that remembers is Franklin Richards. And he kind of acts as the overseer and the god of the universe. This single universe has come together, and I think they'll use it to pull new characters in. So characters like the Magneto, old Magnetos, the old Charles Xavier's, probably somebody like Wolverine, Hugh Jackman, maybe even somebody like Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. They might use him as just another through line character as well. But like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, all those, I think they can. It's the best way to wipe them from the canvas with doing them respect as well, and also integrating them all into one universe. And then I hope this is making sense, because if it doesn't, then it'll sound stupid. But they just basically say, like, we want Miles Morales, Tom Holland, Spider-Man. We want to keep Shuri's Black Panther, but we're going to recast Black Panther. And they start over like they did with Iron Man. And it's Henry Cavill playing Wolverine. And we don't have to do origin stories because we already have, but we pick up at a point in time in the larger Marvel universe where they can tell stories that they didn't get the chance to. They can tell the stories of Iron Man versus the true Mandarin and the 10 Rings that they didn't get to before with just a different Iron Man. They could tell, they could tell the like Black Panther versus Namor stories. They could tell the Namor versus the Fantastic Four stories that they haven't gotten to. They could tell the Captain America Hydra storylines that they didn't get to. And they can just basically, it's a reset to where now they can go explore the infinite number of stories that are in Marvel Comics of characters like Iron Man or Captain America that they didn't get the chance to, because you just can't explore all those in movies. So that's my theory on what will end up happening. I think out of those two, I think what we will get is a ton of characters recasted, and I think that's where the X-Men will pick up. And it will either be picked up as the X-Men have always been there in that new timeline, because it just starts from scratch wherever the heck they want it to, as Franklin Richards reordering the timelines all together to be one. I think that's where X-Men starts. That'll be my first prediction. Second prediction is I think Miles Morales comes into live action. So yeah, that's kind of my grand prediction. It'll probably make no sense, but hopefully if it did, you can go back and read Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, and the end of that Secret Wars and that entire Secret Wars storyline is what they're basing these movies off of as a rough outline. And that's how that one ends. It's basically the Marvel's Ultimates universe and the Marvel main universe, and they kind of mesh together. It's a clear, wipe, because there's obviously within both of those universes there's a Spider-Man in each, there's a Iron Man in each, there's a Captain America in each. They choose whichever one of those two that they like the best, and they mesh them together. And what ends up happening in the comics is that the only person that comes over from the Ultimates is Miles Morales, and he drops into the Marvel universe. I think it's really cool. I think if they pull it off, which I believe they will, we'll get to see so many more storylines of our favorite characters. And it'll probably be one of those things that's extremely controversial, but it might break the in-game record for most money raised, or most money in ticket sales at the box office because of how controversial it could be. And then the recasting, we'll see a whole new generation of actors playing these characters. And it'll truly be like basically a generation two. But we'll get to see all new stories, which I'm just floored excited about. So I've been rambling for a while, just about 45 minutes. So if you're still here, thank you for watching. Like I said at the beginning, I don't know what I'll continue to do with these. I've just got a lot of nerd information, sports information, history information, although I don't know that I'll do any of those, golf information, fantasy football information that's in my head. And I think what I'm going to start doing is it's either going to be podcast or it's going to be these one-man monologue things on my YouTube channel just to, see where it goes. So if you see the clip, one of these clips, and that's what brought you here, give me a follow on whatever account I'm posting those on. And then, share it with a friend. Who knows? So thank you guys for watching. We will talk to you soon. Bye.